Welcome to the Ops Experts Club with Aaron, Taryn, and Savannah. This podcast will take you behind the scenes of some of the finer details of multi-million-dollar companies. These ops experts have dealt with operations for scaling companies and well-established businesses with anywhere from small to large teams. If you've ever been deep into the details of a major company, then you know how much it takes, and these conversations are just for you. Welcome to the Ops Experts Club podcast.
Welcome, Jamie. Welcome to Ops Experts Club.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming. You're high on the list of people that we wanted to bring on the Ops Experts because you know everything about everything.
That's entirely true.
You know a lot of things about most things. How about that?
Okay, I'll take it. I'll take that.
Why don't you give us an intro, Jamie? Who you are, what you do, who you work for, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, so who I am. So I'm Jamie. I work for the Pedro Adao team, the challenge guy, Pedro Adao. And if I were to pick, I guess, what my main focus was, because I feel like I do about 100 million tiny things, my main thing is technically kind of product management. And so in the concept of that where I work, we have a lot of training programs or products and communities. So I'm typically managing those. So that means building courses, training resources, community management, stuff along that line. So anything that kind of has to do with building those or creating, processes or operations or things around those communities and products.
And that's
a little bit all the things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's where all the things come in. But I'm really lucky and blessed to have an amazing team of people who are able to fill in the gaps of things that I don't necessarily know.
It's not small groups of people too, right? Like you're talking about communities of a lot of people.
Yes. Well, so I've mainly done our challenges side of the business, but recently I've been kind of moving over into what we call our 100X community and doing more things over there with their products and stuff. So yeah, there's, when you're dealing with both types of ginormous product, it's a big undertaking for sure.
Yeah. We've been working with you guys and Pedro Adao for a while now. And yeah, we were just like, organization is massive.
Yeah. And we move fast. So you have to be fast. You have to think fast. You have to build fast. And yeah, we're constantly evolving and changing too. So it's you're never doing, which is kind of exciting. You're never doing the same thing really. Mm-hmm. You're just building and creating, which I love to do. So it's exciting for sure.
That's cool. You guys running 100 miles a minute. It's pretty fun to watch actually from the outside.
Yeah, I bet it is. You guys are you predated me working with Pedro Adao. So I've always experienced the company with you guys being there. So you definitely are an integral part of helping us go that fast for sure. Filling in the gaps.
Everybody's just coming down the street with their hair on fire. And just
yeah, I know. And we sometimes joke it's not a joke, but we laugh about it, but it's very serious. We call Taryn our security blanket. So we're Taryn's here. Okay, we all feel warm and comfortable now.
Taryn is panic button and yep.
Until he goes on vacation and he's like, sorry, I'm incognito for 2 weeks. You're like, what?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny that I didn't even realize how much he's a security blanket to me, just knowing that there is a Taryn panic button somewhere. And then so this week he's out of town. And so knowing that I don't have the Taryn panic button, and I was messaging Ben knows I was messaging Ben and Aaron last night where I'm I don't know what to do because I can't get a hold of Taryn.
Yeah, it is. He's an integral part of doing things the way we want them to do, work, right? Because you have an idea in your mind, you're it would really be amazing if it could work this way. And Taryn's oh yeah, I can do that. And then it worked that way. And you're magic. And then he's not there. And you're I need the magic. I need the magic button.
So give us, Jamie, in your role, I guess in your position within Pedro Adao's organization, give us your best story, something that, you learned or you taught or was this an aha moment over the last few years?
I'm definitely going to go in the learned category on that because I feel I'm just constantly learning. But before I came to work with Pedro, I worked in the corporate world and human resources in the banking industry. So we did things really slow. There was a lot of compliance and red tape,
Yeah.
and it took a long time to get things moving. So I was used to an environment where you would like plan a project for a year and you'd work on it, and then it would get tested and released. And so my first couple months working with Pedro Adao was like, holy moly, I can't do this. This isn't operations. I don't know what this is. I'm so overwhelmed. Like, it was crazy, but I have an amazing Scott Benham, who you guys work with,
Mhm.
and he's taught me a lot about just kind of working in that type of environment. But like, I feel like the biggest thing I learned is what he would call an MVP. And I'd be like, what do you like, the most valuable player? And he'd be like, no, minimal viable product. I'm like, what is that? Like, when I would create something, we would just create it like ginormous, right? Like we'd have
Yeah.
a huge project plan, but when you're moving as fast as we do, it's like you're like what's the minimal viable product I create? Like what can I get to like just launch this out so it functions and it, we can deliver on what we promise. So just kind of navigating and learning how to do that, I feel like has been a process for me. Like I feel like I'm getting pretty good at it, especially, I mean, it's been 2 years now, but and just understanding the value of it, right? Like starting like at a very thin slice and not having to bite the whole thing off at the same
Yeah.
time and just sort of building slow. So, we'd build something super manual and be like, oh my gosh, like how can we, build in some technology or use some integrations here to help us like not make this so cumbersome. So like starting from a kind of manual process, you can easily see where you need to add in those pieces, right?
Yep.
So that was just a huge lesson and kind of almost letting go of perfectionism. Like it's almost like it's a mindset thing too. So it was like learning how to use that new skill, but like how to get rid of some of those beliefs. Like I can't release this. Like it's not perfect, So like, you don't even have time to think about if it's perfect. You have to go.
Yeah.
So that was a huge lesson and a valuable lesson. So of course I would love to kind of always slow that down just a little bit, but it's been a useful skill and just some like mindset shifts to kind of shift out of and getting better at operations and building and creating things.
It sounds like too, like a lot of flexibility, like you have to be able to bend and move really quickly. Like, cause I know I'm just from an operations standpoint, from like even my previous work, we moved quickly, but there were times where I'm like, nope, this is how it's going to be done. I don't care what you guys say. I want to do it like this. And that's, I mean, that works in some places, like maybe, like you said, HR in the corporate world, but in
Yeah.
this world, you have to be flexible and you should be willing to like, all right, let's go this other route.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in all reality, like sometimes Pedro's on stage giving an offer and we're like still in the background, like, we're going to plug this one last thing in really quick, Yeah. Wait, I didn't hear that piece, So it's like you're just like building like on the go and it's crazy sometimes, but I mean, it's funny how fast like you can make things happen too. Like sometimes you
Yeah.
can just sit around thinking about things for too long.
Yep.
And then like you've moved on to the next thing and that's like sitting on the table. So sometimes going fast like helps you just get it out there and get it done, right?
Totally.
So it's been super valuable like skill to learn and operate out of. So grateful for
Yeah,
that learning.
I think that's like the pros and cons of operations type people, right? Like we're really good at like planning things out. Okay, this is how it's going to go, A to Z. But then the con is like we have the tendency to just like want to like marinate in our ideas. Be like,
Yeah,
this is a great idea.
for
Let me
sure.
think about it more and more and more.
Right.
It takes somebody to go, hey, no, we got to go now. Like get it out now.
Yeah. I also think we're just kind of wired to think about the what if scenarios because we have to deal with the what if scenarios, right? So, like, sometimes you could just sit around being like, let's build all the what if scenarios
Yeah.
into what I'm building out right now. So I don't have to deal with those what you don't even have time to think about that when you're building fast. You're just like, we just got to make it go. And that's a good thing sometimes, I think. So, because sometimes your what ifs never really come to reality, but you spent a long time building those what ifs.
That is very true. Yeah. Contingency plans. You're like, I need a contingency plan for everything. But then when those things ever happen, you're like, wow, I just wasted so much time.
Us on the team though, we're already
yeah.
like mentally prepared because we've already worried about it
Oh, yeah.
17 times before it
Yeah.
happens. And then we have a little bit of like, I told you, but then at least we thought about it enough that we can come in and swoop in and kind of fix it. But
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. And Pedro always says that's why I have you guys to like worry about the what if, but I don't ever, you never think that way. So it's kind of like a merging of like the thinking basically, like we just balance each other out a little bit.
It
But
really is. And I think that's probably obviously why Pedro Adao is so successful too, is like you need somebody who's like that visionary who's going to push people to go, but you also need the people who are going, what if? And if you have a really good balance of that, you have a really successful organization. It's when it comes off balance that like if the operations people take over, then, nothing ever gets put out for and if the visionary takes over completely, then like stuff just burns down around you because you never have a chance to actually fix anything. I think that, yeah, it's a very good testament to your guys' balance in that sense of being able to, have a foot on the gas and a foot on the brake at the same time and kind of go back and forth to keep things moving along how they should be.
yeah.
I feel like it's something that also like COVID has really like I feel like COVID has kind of shaped businesses the way that
Yeah.
they are that way because before like you could create a course and maybe you create one course in a year and you like spent all this time crafting it out and it's like the most perfect thing and people are all working, going to work, doing their thing. And so it takes them that long to get through it. And then so you have a whole other year to think of your next one. COVID, like everyone started being at home all the time. They blow through a course and they're like, okay, what's next? And I feel like that is part of what has propelled you guys forward is that like someone finishes a program and they're like, great, I'm going to like up level my life. I'm going to do all this cool stuff. Like I use the word up level, guys. And then they finish it in a few weeks and they're asking Pedro like, okay, cool. I finished this part. Like, what's my next step? And it's like, well, I just gave this to you guys a month ago. Here you go. And then he just like creates something. So it's like, you guys have been going like a mile a minute since 2020 because it's what the people want,
Yeah. It's interesting too how COVID changed a little bit what people want. Like even now, like we're still kind of rethinking like the way that we've done things in the past. We're like, we can't really do things this way. So how can we reimagine like how we build courses or how we build programs to like really focus on getting people results, giving them the step-by-step prescription for how you get this done. Like follow this formula or follow this model. Like how can we break down our framework into like an easy action, taking action and getting things done. So, we've been really trying to dive in deep to that and not just training and teaching, but like getting people to actually do stuff and be proud of what they've done, right? Not just complete a course, but like run a challenge, like not just check things off the box, but actually have something in your hands when you're done. So we've really been focusing and reimagining in that space on how we can pull things to that level.
Ideally, right? The you want people, who are consuming your courses and your educational material to like actually being applying it, like not just a lifelong student and never actually applying anything. They actually like those people who went to college for 12 years just because like, I never want to leave.
Well, right. And we do community so well in all of our groups too. It's like sometimes people just want to hang out with us. Like, and that's not bad either. But like, yeah, the community is super important to us. So we're not only just like building products or, doing training, but we're building community and like creating a space for people to do that with each other, which, I think sets us apart too.
Then the next question is, what's the biggest hurdle you've had to get through in your last couple of years of the organization?
I wouldn't say that I've gotten through it, but something I'm really trying to navigate is boundaries. I think because the nature of our job is to want to solve and fix and create and build, there's never a lack of any of those things to do. And there's an abundance of them. It's kind of scary how easy it is to slip into, I'll take on 100 million things. And then you're like, oh no, what did I do? So you're starting to like slip into doing something that's not really your main job. And like all of a sudden you have all these tasks and you're like, I can't possibly work like this anymore. So I think just recently we've just been more conscious about like, what are those boundaries? Like what does fall within the scope of my work? And if we have a gap, I'm not the one to fill it. Like, how can I find somebody else to fill it? Or how can we hire somebody to do that? Or, so like moving into that space is not easy to do. So I do feel like it's not really something that I've conquered or maybe that I ever will conquer, but it's definitely a huge awareness, not just like for work either, because when you start to notice things in one place, you start to see them everywhere else. And you're like, oh man, I could see how that's not just a problem at work, but that's a problem in my home life too.
Once we all start working from home, things all do bleed together. You don't have that like immediate stopping point. And then so it's so important and so hard to really set yourself a blocked out schedule where things aren't just constantly getting
Yeah.
on your nerves.
Yeah. You almost have to fight for it and be really like weirdly strict about it. For me, I'm always like, I don't want to be mean, or I don't want to let down my team. We have an amazing team of people, and sometimes it can feel bad when you're like, I'm not going to do that. So you're like constantly tugging on this tension of like putting on your own oxygen mask first before you start trying to pick up everybody else's stuff.
That's a good way to put
Until
it.
you get burnout, then I feel like you're like, and you get a no, and you get a no, and you get a no. But the goal is to not get there before.
Right. That's like the bad side of it, right? Because like it's in a personality thing where you're like, I'll just do it, do it, do it, do it, do it, and then all of a sudden you explode on everybody. It's like, no, you've crossed the line.
I just recently, not recently, probably in the last few months, I was like, I need to start putting like lunch on my calendar. Because I'd be like, yeah, just schedule an appointment with me. And all of a sudden I'm like, it's 3:00. I haven't been able to eat yet just because I'm trying to help people all the time, or, have a meeting with a client. Finally, I was like, all right, I'm at least putting 45 minutes on my calendar that nobody can schedule with me so I can actually eat lunch in the middle of the day. Because otherwise it's just like, it's the same thing. We have these clients that we work with, and if they have an issue, like I want to make sure that I help them. But at the same time, like you start doing that with everybody, and all of a sudden your day is just gone and you haven't eaten yet.
Right. Yes. Those are very frequent days. I've definitely started blocking specific time off my calendar where I'm doing like focused work, like things that I, turn off my like dings, and, people can't really get a hold of me. And then deep work where I'm completely off the grid and like I'm like deep into like developing or creating stuff. And then actually saying whatever else is left on the calendar is just kind of general work, and people can get a hold of me and I'll check email or Slack or whatever. But like really getting crazy strict about blocking those times off my calendar and what I will do in those, like planning my week out. I have these many blocks of focused work. What do I need to put in each one of those blocks? So I know going in what I'm going to do. Because if I don't do that, like I'll just do whatever is in front of me. So
that's a great pro tip for people. Schedule out general work, easy work, deep work. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
And you guys rolled that out company wide, right? Like you guys made that like a company culture kind of thing. I love that you guys did. So everybody, it's not a privilege, it's a necessity.
Yeah, we get permission to do that, which is pretty awesome, because a lot of times you can feel like you don't have permission to do that. Like you have to be available all the time. And that's when people's boundaries start getting crossed. And there's so many like blurred lines, and you don't know how many hours people are working every day just to get things done. And just like you said, Ben, like you want to help people, like somebody slacks you and they're like, hey, I need this done. And you want to jump in and help. But sometimes you're like, oh, I can't get to that right now.
Yeah. I'm curious, did you notice a big difference between your corporate HR job and moving into the entrepreneurial space? Was it like a big shift? I know in the corporate world, everything was very structured. Like, this is your role, you do this, nothing else but this. Was it a big going from like, I do this one thing to now, like, I'm wanting to help everybody with everything and try to go back?
That's a really good question, because I actually left the corporate world because I didn't want to be boxed in. Like, I hate having to do the same thing every day. Like, I need variety. I need to be able to make impact where I can. And the corporate world is very structured about roles and responsibilities and not crossing boundaries. And so I left for that reason. But like that kind of freedom has to be managed, right? Like, you don't just jump into that and everything's like fantastic. It's very overwhelming, especially when you're used to structure. So having the company invest in us and do that leadership training where we learned that helpful tip of how to use your time and how to manage your time well when you have so much freedom was amazing, value for us. And then permission to actually, say no or to have boundaries. So I think that's been very helpful. And it was a tough transition. There are days where I'm like, I'm pretty sure I made the wrong decision and I should probably leave and nobody would notice.
They would for sure notice. Personally, I jumped from the structured space into motherhood, which I feel like there's no setting boundaries. That doesn't exist. But then from there being deep in motherhood and then getting the chance to work virtually and like you said, like seeing like the freedom that you get from being to work virtually and working for an entrepreneur and what that means. And without having that structured, like you work from 9 to 5, just getting so excited that you just go all in. Where I was working, I had a new baby and I was working like 50 hours a week because I was just so excited. And then I did reach the burnout stage and everything.
Yeah. It's real. It happens. And it sneaks up on you. That's what I said earlier. It's like, it's scary how much you just can naturally flow back into overwhelm and not even notice until you're, there. You're not in a good place. So
Yeah, that was, I mean, my last line of work, we definitely weren't corporate structure at all. We were pretty fly by the seat of our pants too, but it was like leaving that company and coming to work with, say, the Collab team. It was great because obviously I got to start working from home, but it was like that previous company, the expectation was you're always on, like no matter, like you're answering emails at 9:00. So like leaving that, I was like, oh, this is great. I don't have to do this anymore. And then come into the Collab team where it's like, yeah, you work when you want, you set your hours. I was like, but maybe I should answer an email at 9:00 tonight.
yeah.
You don't have to do this, but changing that mindset, I guess, kind of like you're saying, which is very difficult for operations people because you're just like you said, you want to help everybody. You have to literally force yourself to say, no, these are my boundaries. Like you said, this is what I'm going to do. Otherwise, my natural tendency is I'm just going to burn myself out all the time if I'm not careful.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause it's weird. Your mind's like, it's just a little email. Like I'll answer an email at 9:00 at night. And then the next thing you know, it's like the new habit. You're answering emails every night at 9 p.m.
And setting expectations with your team, right? So if you have someone who is more of a night owl or like, heaven forbid, there's some of those people that just like only need 4 hours of sleep a night. Are you one of those people?
No. I'm like, give me 10 hours of sleep, please.
Yes. So there's some people that just that is the norm for them. And then so I feel like when you you give that little inch and you respond at 9:00 at night and you start saying yes to them and they're like, oh, I found someone who works like me. And then they just start sending you all the things. And then harder to roll back that expectation than to just kind of like cleanly set it out in the first place.
That is very true. My mom always says you teach people how to treat you. And so that's a pure example of that.
Yeah, that's very fair. So here's a curveball for you, Jamie. What's on the horizon? What's new coming up? Do you have any big plans, projects coming down the pipeline?
I mean, probably the biggest thing coming for our company is the Wisdom Challenge, which we do every year in January. So this year we are actually planning early. So we've dove into getting things scheduled, getting things created and built. So I'm super excited about the opportunity to have that pre-planning, even though I would love 6 months or a year to plan it. But
I was super stoked for you guys when I saw that you guys were planning out January. I'm like, oh, that's cool.
Isn't that cool? We've never planned out that early. So that's pretty exciting, which comes with that, our conference. We have a March conference. So the Wisdom Challenge kind of leads into that. So we're even doing things to plan for that March conference right now too, which is huge for us. There's kind of a shift going on where we're planning some things out. Operations and entrepreneurship is going to meet in the middle on this one. So it's exciting. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Jamie, it has been a blast having you on.
Thank
Any
you.
last words of wisdom you might want to give to the folks when it comes to operating inside of an entrepreneurial business?
I mean, for me, I've talked about the ones that are really most important to me right now at this moment. So I think being really clear about your boundaries is probably the biggest step.
Yeah.
But I think that just comes with time, right? And paying attention to what you're doing and kind of being aware of what you're doing instead of just running an autopilot. So I've gotten to the habit of really tracking my things that I've done, which is kind of irritating at first, but it really helps you give a clear picture of where you're spending a lot of your time. And so when I'm
Smart.
feeling super overwhelmed, I'm always like, all right, I got to go back to tracking what I'm doing because obviously I'm doing something wrong again. So
Smart. It's smart. I mean, people do
yeah.
that with their meals and calories, right?
Yeah. When you're working fast and you're creating and building new things and managing old things, it's really important to just kind of always take a snapshot of what's happening and then readjust and reevaluate and re-choose, really. I mean,
Mhm.
that's really kind of what we're doing at all times. Nothing ever stays the same. So why should the way we're doing work always stay the same?
Words of wisdom from Jamie. Church, everybody.
Yep.
Thanks for coming on,
Well,
Jamie. It's been a
thanks for
blast.
having me. Yeah, it's been great talking to you guys, and I love working with you and partnering with you guys on all the things. You guys are amazing.
Yeah, we love working with you guys.
Thank you for tuning in to the Ops Experts Club podcast. New episodes available every week on Spotify, iTunes, and everywhere you listen to podcasts. If you're curious about how some of the biggest names in entrepreneurship have scaled their businesses to the next level, check out some of our best content on this topic by going to foundationsthatscale.com. You can find the link in our bio and do your part to improve as an ops expert.